From an obscure illegitimate son of a marquis to a powerful lord commanding great armies. I stood by his side for 7 years and lost 2 children for him. When he reached the pinnacle of power, I was left unable to conceive again. But remembering how Damien had avenged my mother's murder, I held no grudges. My love for him still deeply rooted. All of the capital's elite tried to place women in his household, but he swore an oath in public, cutting off his finger, vowing to never betray me in this life. Yet in the 7th year of our marriage, I personally witnessed him pinning a naked woman down on our bed. "You slut, weren't 3 rounds enough for you? If you dare to shamelessly wear my wife's clothes again, I'll make sure you can't get out of this bed." The woman, panting, turned her face, and it was the very person who had destroyed my family. My ankle twisted on the last wooden step of the tea house. I stumbled, and when I looked up, through the large crack in the door, I saw my husband, the man who professed to love me so deeply, pinning a woman to the bed. They were entangled without a care, the floor littered with clothes torn off in haste. My husband, always so composed in my presence, was even using our matching mandarin duck jade pendants as a toy, gliding it over her voluptuous body. It wasn't until I saw her face that I felt as if I'd been struck by lightning. A ringing filled my ears, and I could barely stand. My father's illegitimate daughter, the murderer of my mother. She was supposed to have died in a fire to pay for my mother's life, but now, she was alive, writhing beneath Damien. Serena's arched neck was a canvas of love bites, old and new. Damien's head was buried in her flesh, lost in pleasure. She glanced at me provocatively through the crack in the door, then wrapped her arms around Damien's neck, panting as she pleaded. "Brother-in-law, Serena is aching. Whatever sister owes you in bed, let Serena repay you double, shall I?" The man who was a paragon of virtue in public was now utterly disgusting. "Does a whore like you even deserve to speak Alera's name?" Damien's voice was laced with filth as he pressed down on her forcefully. The sprain in my ankle spread to my chest, a tearing hatred that pierced my heart. Serena watched with delight, biting back a moan as she reached for his lips, whispering, "But brother-in-law, don't you just love a whore like me, who knows how to please you? Otherwise, why would you, knowing your wife can't tolerate betrayal, fool her with a charred corpse while hiding me right under her nose for your daily pleasure? Aren't you afraid she'll find out, doing this even in a tea house?" Damien bit down on her earlobe as she cried out in pain. He gritted his teeth. She would give her life for me, so how could she ever suspect me? Inside, a blazing fire. Outside, a raging blizzard, standing in the snow. I was frozen through with a chilling hatred. Even my voice trembled when I spoke. My guard knelt on one knee, not daring to look up. "Over a year. My lady, it is not that we intentionally hid this from you. The Marquise gave a direct order. We did not dare to speak." Over a year. It started the 2nd year after Damien was ennobled, the same year my father was imprisoned by my own swift actions, only to be released unscathed. At the time, Damien had explained the political complexities, the precarious position of his family, his own difficult situation. When he finished, I had coldly drawn the sword from beside our bed. Only then did his face pale, and he told me he had personally killed Serena, the one who caused my mother's death, to ease my heart. He had kicked the charred corpse into the churning river and said, "Alera, your vengeance is complete. You should be happy now." But it was all a lie from the very beginning. Since you were the one to break faith first, you cannot blame me for being merciless. Keep your mouth shut. As of today, you never saw me here. I turned and walked away, pulling the matching jade pendant from my waist and tossing it to a young beggar on the street. Anything tainted, be it people or things, I no longer wanted. Walking through the blizzard, I thought of my 7 years with Damien. I remembered the 17-year-old Damien, when my arrow, after 3 hours of ambush, missed my father's heart and brought the city guard down on me. He had extended a hand. "Come, with me. No one will search the Marquise's carriage." I remembered the illegitimate son, treading on thin ice, who endured 30 lashes with a military rod in a blizzard to win my hand, a bride with no backing. His flesh was torn, but he forced a smile. Alara, I cannot offer you a grand betrothal gift, so I offer half my life as proof of my resolve. I remembered our wedding night, his cheeks flushed, his shy excitement as he lifted my veil. Alara, you are my wife now. May we be like a pair of soaring swans, never to be parted in 100 years of life. I remembered losing our first child, how he lifted me from a pool of blood, his hands trembling in panic. He pressed his cold forehead to mine, tears streaming down his face. Alara, don't sleep. I am back. I'll get justice for you. If the law won't take his life, then I will trade mine for his. I remembered losing our second child and falling into a coma. He had sat by my bed, holding my hand, his hair turning white overnight. What is the point of beautiful days and fine scenery if you are not here to share them? If I could, I would trade everything for you to open your eyes. I remembered when the Empress detained me, trying to force him to marry her niece. He had furiously cut off his finger and sworn an oath. If I ever betray Alara, may I, Damien, die by 1,000 arrows. Yesterday's vows were still vivid, yet today he had pierced my heart with the deceit of having another woman. I hated him. I was disgusted. The snow covered my path. It was time, I thought, to walk a different road. It was evening when Damien returned to the manor. As always, when he returned late, he was full of apologies and carried my favorite sweets. Today, it was roasted chestnuts, honeyed sweet potatoes, and candied hawthorns. The chestnuts from the east side are the softest. The sweet potatoes from the west are the sweetest. And the candied hawthorns from the north are the ones you've always loved. Did I get that right, my lady? He came in still dusted with snow from his fur cloak, not even taking a moment to brush it off. He knelt before me, pulling the treats from his coat like a treasure. You are delicate, my lady. You must eat these while they're warm. The carriage was too slow, so I rode back myself. Feel, they're still hot. His fingertips were ice, cold, the tip of his nose red, but his eyes burned with a fire. He tilted his head to kiss me. I turned away in disgust. He looked surprised, hurt, and confused. Are you angry that I am late? You know my position is not what it once was. With great power comes great responsibility. After his explanation, he held the treats out to me. Which one do you want? I'll feed you. He was so sincere. It was as if the debauchery I'd witnessed at noon had been just a terrible dream. But on closer inspection, the tunic beneath his robes was slightly wrinkled, and a faint dusting of powder clung to his chest. He even carried the scent of white iris, a perfume only Serena and her mother wore. He was a monster, loving me with tender care while shamelessly deceiving and betraying me. My palms ached from clenching my fists. I tapped the letter I was holding and said playfully, "Do you remember Rose, the maid in my courtyard? The cousin she ran away with, who took all her savings, took a second wife after his business started to succeed. They were so in love. He promised me he would be good to her for a lifetime, but a man's lifetime is so short. What should be done with those who break their vows?" Damien's hand resting on the brazier flinched. His expression turned cold. Alara, not everyone has the leisure to dwell on the romantic trifles of the servants' quarters. Why bring such trivial matters to me? A maid of low birth, being a rich merchant's concubine, is no disgrace to her. She is clothed and fed. What more could she want? So, being clothed and fed was enough. I gave a sarcastic smile. If that is the case, let's eat. The food is getting cold. He breathed a sigh of relief, but he frowned upon seeing the dishes on the table. Why are there no meat dishes? What are the servants thinking? Today is the anniversary of my mother's death. It is not appropriate to eat meat. Damien's face stiffened. I am sorry, Alara. I had so much to attend to in the capital today. I completely forgot about your mother's memorial. It doesn't matter. He was busy with Serena, lost in a whole afternoon of pleasure. I knew. I slowly rose and took the letter with me. I am very tired. I'll rest now. I'll take a hot bath and join you. No need on my mother's Memorial Day. I wish to sleep alone. Damien paused. I'll accompany you to the Sterling Manor tomorrow. Go back to my family home. Very well, it was time to see that shameless father and his mistress. Damien, on his magnificent horse, escorted me and a carriage full of lavish gifts to the Sterling estate. Along the way, countless women blushed and watched with envy. But no one knew that in my carriage lay an earring that did not belong to me. It was the one Serena's prostitute mother had worn the day she drove my mother to her death. It was also a deliberate provocation, a humiliation left by Serena. The sharp point of the earring pierced my heart. When we dismounted, Damien instinctively reached out to help me. But the thought of his hypocrisy filled me with revulsion. I stepped away, lifting my own skirt as I got down. He frowned. My lady, you have become distant with me. I looked at him, terrifyingly calm. You were the one who deceived me first, and now you blame me for being cold. Were you not the one who broke faith? Were you not the one who stabbed me in the heart first? Ilara, my dear, why didn't you let your father know you were coming? I would have prepared your favorite little treats. My father greeted me with great enthusiasm, putting on a perfect show of fatherly affection, but the vulgar splash of pink behind him betrayed him. Go for a walk in the garden with your Aunt Melissa. Your father has important matters to discuss with Damien. No need. I'll just go sit in my mother's courtyard. This Aunt Melissa was Serena's mother, Melissa. She was once from a noble family, but after her family was executed for treason, she was sold to a brothel. My father had secretly bought her freedom. Their illicit affair produced Serena, who was only 4 years my junior. Shamelessly, on the day my mother was due to give birth, she had sent Serena to our home to kneel before my mother and demand recognition. The shock had caused my mother to hemorrhage, killing both her and my unborn sibling. I was 7. I held a knife to Serena's throat and forced the servants to call my uncle for justice. In the end, Melissa was barred from the Sterling family. She was settled in our old hometown as a mistress. On my wedding night, under the flickering red candles, I had said, "From this day on, I have 2 goals: to help you achieve greatness and to avenge my mother." Damien had sworn to the heavens, "Your vengeance is my vengeance. When I am in a position of power, I will spare no effort to seek revenge for you." Later, he had pointed to a charred corpse and told me, "Serena is dead. Ilara, you can finally be yourself." Where had Serena died? She had died in their bed of pleasure. Hatred wounded me, my palms slick with blood. If my lady is displeased, then let no one cause her any more trouble. Damien took my cold hand, his face unusually stern, yet he left them out. Melissa's triumphant expression froze. She quickly bowed in a fawning manner. Yes, yes, we will listen to the Marquis. It was my mistake. I will take my leave." Tightening my cloak, Damien playfully tapped my nose. "If you are unhappy and want to leave, just call for me. I'll be waiting." Then he frowned and spoke coldly to the 2 men behind him. "If anyone disrespects her, deal with them on the spot. My wife is not someone to be trifled with." My father, taking the hint, apologized profusely and shooed Melissa back to her courtyard. They were all acting, but I had once taken it for truth. When I entered my mother's courtyard, Melissa was already waiting to vex me. "Serena has been with the Marquis for a year now. As her older sister, you should welcome her into the family. After all, the one thing you can't give him, which he desperately wants, only my Serena can provide. You and your prim and proper mother would never understand the pleasure a man seeks. Instead of having him sneak around day and night, why not let him feast openly?" She arrogantly adjusted the priceless jewels in her hair. They were gifts from either my father or Damien. As she flaunted them before me, I raised an eyebrow. "Have you been freed from your servitude?" She stiffened. "I knew it. As long as my uncle is alive, you will never be free. Men, this slave is insolent. Beat her." My mother's courtyard had been stripped bare. Even the few keepsakes that held her memory had been destroyed by Melissa. Men are faithless, always chasing the new. My father had long forgotten the love of his youth. Why would he care what happened to my mother's courtyard? Damien was on the same path, but unfortunately for him, I was not my mother. I came especially for you today, and you did not disappoint. Melissa's mouth was beaten to a pulp, her jewels stripped from her. She lay on the ground like a dog, only able to whimper. Where was the arrogance from before? There was nothing more to see. I turned to leave. The master has gone out. My father was out, but Damien had not returned. Where could he be? The Marquise is in the master's study. He hasn't come out. Through the door, I heard the sound of an ink brush falling. Serena's breathless voice asked, "Don't you miss me? I miss you so much I can't sleep, brother. In-law." That last word was drawn out coquettishly. Damien responded like a man possessed, "Chasing me all the way here? You truly have no shame." Serena laughed. "To die in your arms, brother, in-law, would be a joyous fate even for a ghost. But if you ask me, no place is as good as your sister's hot springs. When will you take me there again?" My hand paused. I let out a choked laugh. The hot springs in the countryside were a place Damien had begged the Emperor to grant me for my recovery, after I lost our second child and my health suffered. It was a sign of favor that the entire capital envied. But they had been there too, in their frenzy. Our love was rotten, just like Damien himself. I was so disgusted. I felt sick. My body was so cold I curled into a ball. With a crash, the door was pushed open. A wise person should learn to be deaf and dumb. My father entered slowly, carrying my favorite crispy duck. Those like your mother who cannot tolerate a single speck of dust in their eyes only end up trapping themselves. He laughed with immense scorn. The Sterling family will not offend the Marquis to grant you a divorce. If you insist on tearing everything apart, can you handle the consequences? Think of your uncle. In his declining years, me uncle, in his quest for justice for my mother, a mere merchant, had sued a court official. He had endured torture to bring my father to court. But I was too young then, with no evidence. My father had saved himself by denying the identities of Melissa and her daughter. But my uncle's health was ruined. He was bedridden for years. His only heir was my studious cousin. He and Damien were good friends. He trusted Damien completely. So when Damien offered him a position to gain experience, he accepted without hesitation. He had said, "In this world, only brother-in-law is good to my sister. He would never harm her. As long as it is for my sister's good, I would go through fire and water." But he had broken a leg last year and injured an arm this year. Whenever I asked, he would say, "Brother-in-law says a man needs to be tough, that just reading books is useless. Sister, I want to be like him, to forge a path with a spear and protect you." But this brother-in-law, he so admired, had ground our trust and sincerity into the dirt. When Damien rose to power, terrified of losing me, his protective talisman, he had taken hold of my uncle's family, using them as a weakness to control me. A broken arm or leg was nothing. He could take my cousin's life just as easily. He played the part of the loving husband for all to see, while holding a knife to my heart. "Damien, you are truly something else." Seeing my gritted teeth, my father smirked with contempt. "You are well fed and well clothed, and you have the title of a lady. He just wants a child. Is it not better for it to come from your own sister's womb than a stranger's? What man doesn't want a child of his own? The Marquis's estate is vast. He can't just hand it over to strangers after he is gone. He just wants to give you a legitimate heir. Learn to be smart. Don't force your uncle to give up the rest of his life for you. Tode's crispy duck is especially fine. The Marquis will like it." Having made enough noise to alert the people inside, he left with a fawning smile. "My dear son, in-law, I've brought the crispy duck. We can eat now." With a creak, the door opened from the inside. Damien's robes were in disarray, a flush still on his cheeks. He was startled to see me. "Why are you not wearing your cloak? What if you catch a cold?" He quickly took off his own cloak and rushed to put it on me. But I was filled with loathing and took 3 large steps back. "Who has upset you now?" The wind and snow whipped through my sleeves, chilling me to the bone. My eyes were red from the cold as I stared at him. When will my cousin's training be over? He guiltily avoided my gaze. Why do you suddenly bring this up? When? Alara. Damien had lost his patience. Fulfill your duties as the lady of the house. I will handle the rest. But he is my brother. He has already been injured. What more do you want? He coldly draped the cloak over me and leaned in, his hands on my shoulders, his voice full of authority. You behave, and he will be fine. His cold fingertips even brushed my cheek. Protect the family's honor. Do not ask, and do not interfere with anything else. Even a threat could be delivered with such intimacy. But when I had plotted through the night for him, trading the child in my womb for his heirship, had he ever told me not to interfere? When he had me stand behind the emperor, risking my life for his ambition, had he ever said it was none of my business? Now that he was in power, he had the confidence to be arrogant. He wanted both honor and illicit pleasure, and after using me completely, he wanted me to be deaf and dumb. After 7 years together, I finally saw him for what he was: selfish, cold-blooded, shameless, and vile. But he seemed to have forgotten that when it came to my family, I could not tolerate a single speck of dust. I could risk my life for him time and time again, and I could just as easily take his for those I needed to protect. Control me? Did they think they were worthy? I hid my hatred and lowered my head with a smile. Perhaps you are right. But I did not agree. I turned to my father. Thank you for your guidance, Father. I have learned my lesson, but I have a gift for you as well. My father was confused, but under Damien's gaze he held out his hand. I smiled and placed the 3 teeth that had been knocked out of Melissa's mouth into his palm. He was horrified, but I laughed with delight. Vengeance is best served immediately, as my husband says. This time, it was for insolence. Next time, for disrespect, I will gouge out her eyes. You know I can do it. My father was so scared his face turned white, and his body trembled. Enough. Damien sighed in relief and took my hand. Was all this fuss over that? Her teeth have been knocked out. Your anger should be appeased now, right? Appeased. Did my mother die for nothing? Did my 2 children die for nothing? If you want to appease me, then you should all suffer the pain I have endured. Ilara, at our station in life, we can no longer be so willful. There must be moderation in all things to leave room for maneuver. But he was wrong. When it comes to a fight to the death, there is no room for maneuver. Only the more skilled will survive. The crispy duck. I had your father buy it for you. Have some. Damien played the part of the loving husband so convincingly that he didn't even glance back at the study. I didn't believe him, but Serena, standing at the door with trembling lips, did she rushed over to me when I was alone. In a private room on the 2nd floor of a tea house, overlooking the window, I handed the documents for a new identity and 10,000 silver taels to Lord Alistair. His breath hitched. Are you sure you want to abandon everything in the capital and start over with this identity? I nodded gently. A nameless herb girl who looks like me died in the mountains. I buried her. Her identity will suit me perfectly. Besides, the disaster I was about to bring upon the Damien and Sterling families was absolute. If I didn't run, was I supposed to go down with them? One has to be realistic. Hold on to your assets. As for love and affection, those are just luxuries. If they're gone, don't force it. Learn to let go in time. Crying when you are stuck in the mud is useless. You have to think about how to save yourself, and then deliver a fatal blow. With the Damien family fallen, the Alistair family would rise. It was a win-win situation. Why wouldn't he agree? He stroked his teacup, asking with interest, this scorched earth approach. Do you truly not feel anything for your 7 years with Damien? I paused, then smiled. 7 years of being deceived and used? Would you miss that? An adult has to find their own way. He failed me. I cannot fail myself. Don't you agree? Lord Alistair understood my resolve and told me to wait for his good news. Just as he went downstairs, Serena arrived uninvited and sat down opposite me with a smile. You want to use him to kill me, but he would rather die of pleasure on top of me. She laughed arrogantly, the hairpin in her hair, the one Damien had promised me but later claimed he couldn't find, swaying nauseatingly. On your mother's Memorial Day last year, he claimed he had business at the palace and left you alone in the countryside? Do you know where he went? It was me. I sent him an embroidered corset with a voluptuous body on it. A red-blooded man. How could he resist? For the next 3 days, he was in my bed. Even on your birthday, the reason you couldn't find him was because he was with me, choosing a house that I liked. She touched her flat stomach with a blissful expression. Your husband, he may seem cold, but he is a man of great passion. Do you know the most he has taken me in one day? 7 times. Can you guess when he will return to the manor today? Or if he will return at all? You've probably never experienced such intense naked passion, have you? If you are truly suffering, now that I am pregnant, perhaps you should learn some of the arts of the courtesan's men. They love the very things you noble ladies look down upon. At this point, did she really think I cared about what Damien did in bed? I met her provocative gaze and smiled. If you had gotten what you wanted, why would you be sneaking around to see me? I suddenly grabbed her hand and said with a sinister smile, why don't I take you to Damien and we can clear this up? She panicked, calling me a madwoman as she struggled to get free. Seeing her frenzy, I let go, sending her stumbling, stepping over her. I brushed off my sleeves. You are just a plaything. So what if he keeps you? So what if you are pregnant? Even if you give birth, the child will be just like you, the bastard of a mistress. Or perhaps, if it is a daughter, you'll be like your mother and personally pass on your skills, teaching her to be a mistress for the rest of her life. Serena's smile vanished. She became hysterical. We are both daughters of the Sterling family. What right do you have to look down on me? So, what if you married into the Damien family? How did it feel to be a widow for the past year? I don't know whether to call you stupid or foolish. A few little treats and he had you wrapped around his finger. Did you know that my brother was freed from servitude long ago, and that his fine position was arranged by Damien himself? My hand trembled, and I scalded myself with the tea. I had almost forgotten about him. I had to thank Serena for the reminder. My face must have gone pale, because she became even more triumphant. Every year, my father would go to our old hometown under the guise of visiting relatives, but it was to be with my mother. My brother is only 2 years younger than me. So even before my mother was cold in her grave, my father had had another child with Melissa. I should have burned him to death when I was 7. A chill spread through me, the hatred making my heart race with cold fear. Everyone in the Sterling family knew, but to ensure my father had an heir, they all chose to hide it from you. Your stupid mother. She used her vast dowry to help everyone in the family, but in the end, it was all for my mother and brother. You and your mother, who cannot produce an heir, will have the same fate. You'll rot in your beds with no one to bury you. She cackled, her body shaking with laughter. Slap! I struck her across the face. Brother-in-law. Oh, so Damien had arrived. A smile curved my lips. I grabbed her hand, and before she could play the victim, I gritted my teeth and pushed her, sending us both tumbling down the stairs. I even used her arm to break our fall against a pillar at the corner. I was unharmed, but she, crushed beneath me, was bleeding from her head and had a broken arm. Damien practically ran over, unthinkingly pulling me into his arms. Alara, are you hurt? Serena, her face covered in tears, clutched her bleeding wounds and cried pitifully. Sister, if you want to beat me or kill me, just do it to me. My mother is innocent. You've ruined her face. How can she show herself in public? Now you've pushed me down the stairs. I am afraid the child in my belly. She clutched her stomach, looking helpless. Please, brother-in-law, seek justice for me. She was a fool. In public, did she really think the man who had built a reputation as a devoted husband would protect her? Damien frowned, his lips trembling before he spoke. You brought this humiliation upon yourselves. You deserve it. The tears froze on Serena's face. Brother-in-law, get lost. Damien picked me up and walked away. He didn't spare a single glance for the woman on the floor, but I could feel the hands holding me tighten over an old wound, causing a sharp pain. Why wasn't she burned to death by you? And why did she have to come and flaunt her brother's success? Do you think she deserves to die? Damien's steps faltered guiltily, but he avoided the topic of her brother. My lady is injured. We will return to the manor at once. But I wouldn't let him. Kill them for me, Damien. You've owed me that for a year. Damien's brow furrowed. Ilera, stop this nonsense. Oh, so my quest for vengeance was just nonsense to him. But this time, I was determined to see it through. Damien's carriage rushed back to the manor, as if in a great hurry. Outside the gates, a guard whispered something to him, and a look of annoyance crossed his face. The guard said quickly, "My lord, you have official duties to attend to this afternoon. Could you?" Damien nodded, no longer even trying to pretend. "Don't wait for me for dinner." He started to turn, then stopped. "Ilera, have I spoiled you too much over the years? Do you know how much trouble you've caused me by assaulting someone in public? You will confine yourself to the ancestral hall to reflect. Tomorrow, I will take you to the palace to apologize. This constant violence is unbecoming." The wind was too loud, too grating. I only heard myself say with a cold laugh, "Without my violence, would you be sitting on your high throne today?" His gaze sharpened, meeting mine in a fierce standoff, but faced with my unyielding resolve, he stormed away in a rage. Around the corner, I heard the guard's voice. "My lord, was that too harsh? My lady is sharp and cannot tolerate betrayal. To have the dead resurrected and flaunted before her, and for you to be so protective, is that not a slap in her face?" Damien paused. The guard continued. "My lady has been through so much with you. What if?" Damien let out a careless sneer. "She has nothing, and her health is ruined. What does she have without me? Serena may be a plaything, but the child in her belly is my heir. Besides, with her cousin in my hands, even if she knows, she'll have to grit her teeth and pretend she doesn't." Damien knew everything. That is why his betrayal was so thorough, so shameless. Separated by a wall, we were now in two opposing camps, an uncrossable chasm between us. Just a street away from Serena's residence, there was a vendor selling my favorite candied hawthorns. Every time Damien went for a tryst with her, he would bring me back a skewer. This past year, he had gone so often that I had eaten so much sugar my teeth had rotted. The pain would keep me up all night, alone. The sweetness was laced with blades, cutting me to pieces, little by little. They were his slow, soft knives. My teeth began to ache again. How could I let my entire life be consumed by 7 rotten years? When adults are done with emotions, it is time to talk about interests. The future I had secured for him with 2 children, and my own well-being. If he would not use it for me, then I would take it all back. I took out the secret letters from his study and copied them, one by one. Then, I used his personal seal to stamp the official appointment I had arranged for my cousin. Finally, a deadly letter was sent by express courier to my cousin's city. After that, I began to gather my cash. I made sure my future was secure. People should be selfish. He sought his pleasure, so I would seek my fortune. He toiled on top of women, so I would build my foundation with money. He had his gains, and I would cut my losses. As expected, Damien didn't return until dawn, and he brought candied hawthorns again. You must be tired of these, aren't you? People always crave the new, just like him. After 7 years, he was tired of me. He smelled sickeningly sweet, but he still came to hold me. Ilera, I have chosen a child. When he is born, I will bring him to you to raise. I cannot bear for you to be childless. Cannot bear for me to be childless. Or did he see me as a weak, easily manipulated fool, the perfect person to be a pawn? I wanted to laugh, and I did. I laughed so hard I nearly fell. Ilera, have you had enough? I looked up at his anger. Have you had enough on Serena? In the tea house, the tavern, the hot springs, or the carriage? Or perhaps my father's study? Which place do you prefer? She would surely want to know, wouldn't she? Shock flashed in his eyes. You knew. I smirked. If I didn't find out soon, I would be raising the son of my mother's murderer. Damien, we were together for 7 years. There were moments of genuine affection. But when you raised the knife of our love to cut me to pieces, did you not feel a single pang of guilt? He was instantly flustered and angry. So what if you know? She is just a plaything. Your body is ruined. The scar on your belly is huge and hideous. What was I supposed to do? Be celibate for the rest of my life? The scar from the knife I had taken for the Emperor, the wound on my body had become a source of disgust in his heart. Without my hideous life-saving scar, would there be a Lord Damien today? Enough. He was shaking with rage. Stop reminding me. Any other woman could have done the same. Alara, your mother died early. You were like a stray dog. It was I who married you against all odds and made you who you are, not the other way around. I have given you more than enough. What more do you want? I laughed. I made you. Who was the one who was injured? Who was the one who ended up in power? All I ever wanted was to use your hand to get my revenge. Did you do that? Enough. He swept the tea set off the table. Revenge, revenge, revenge. Is that all there is in your world? Have you ever tried to please me like Serena does? Have you ever put aside your hatred for my sake? You only care about yourself. You are just as unreasonable as your father said. He stormed out and didn't return for days. He had me confined to the manor, forbidden to take a single step out. But I still managed to convert my assets into silver notes and have them sent out of the city. This game of false love, Damien. I can only play with you this far. On my birthday, Damien, for the sake of appearances, brought me, the Emperor's great benefactor, out in public. The Emperor, his reward was for me, not him. But before the banquet he had unilaterally planned had even begun, he was being summoned by Serena's messengers. She wanted to ruin my day, but I was magnanimous. Official business cannot be delayed. You should go, my lord. He paused, then breathed a sigh of relief. My wife is always so considerate. I will be back shortly. He was about to leave, then turned back. I have a birthday gift for you. I nodded faintly and gave him one last look. I have a surprise for you too. Hearing this, his eyes softened, and he hugged me. Your sincerity, my lady. I can only repay with the rest of my life. I tried to see through him, but his eyes were a deep, unreadable pool. I only saw my own determined reflection. Go. It is all right if you are a little late. Because this time, I would not believe you, and I would not wait for you. On an hour later, a guard burst into the small courtyard in the north of the city. My lord, it is terrible. My lady. She is gone. When Damien rushed from his lover's arms to the Sterling estate, my mother's courtyard had already been burned to the ground. A charred corpse lay naked in the courtyard. He was horrified, his voice trembling as he spoke to the guard. How could this be? Wasn't she waiting for me at the restaurant? What the guard didn't know was that after Damien had been called away, I had played the part of the wronged wife in front of the other ladies, then left in tears and went to the Sterling estate alone. I stood in my mother's courtyard for a quarter of an hour. When the housekeeper tentatively asked if I would stay for dinner, I turned with a smile and asked coldly, when your wife had a difficult childbirth, it was my mother who gave 200-year-old ginseng roots to pay for the imperial physician who saved her life. Do you remember? The housekeeper stiffened, muttering words of thanks, but not a single mention of my mother. I understood. Old kindnesses are like flowing water. Who remembers the source of the nourishment they received? So, I took out his son's hairpin. Your craftsmanship is excellent, housekeeper. A hairpin carved by your own hand is truly exquisite. The housekeeper's face went white with fear. A hairpin worn in the hair is easily taken, just as easily as I could take his son's head. My lady, the law is supreme. Do not do anything foolish. If not for yourself, think of your mother's family's reputation. I sighed. It is because I have thought too much of my uncle that I have allowed that man to live for so long. But what has my forbearance gotten me? You know better than I do. The housekeeper, who often visited Serena's courtyard, certainly knew. He stammered, unable to speak, so I continued. I have already taken poison, but to die alone is too lonely. I must take some people with me. The housekeeper was trembling. I asked with interest. Who will it be you choose? A packet of poison powder was placed on the stone table. I didn't even spare a glance for the kneeling housekeeper as I went to my father's study. He was holding a letter from his beloved son, his eyes full of admiration. My arrival soured his mood. His face turned cold. He didn't know that it was not just his face that would soon turn cold. It is not out of the question for Serena to enter the Marquise's household, but I have conditions. My father's greedy eyes lit up. That is more like it. Ilera, you must know that we are family. What are your conditions? As long as they are not too outrageous, I will agree. I looked up at him. Melissa must pour me a cup of wine and apologize. He was overjoyed. Good. Good. I will arrange it at once. In my mother's courtyard. That is fine. They were wary, sipping the wine with caution. I, however, drank it down without a care. As Melissa gritted her teeth in resentment, I finally looked at her. You and Serena are so close. I truly envy you. My father was about to intervene, but I stopped him. But all I can do is envy. My mother is forever dead at your hands. Their faces turned cold. I stood up. The gnawing pain. It has rotted inside me for over a decade. Do you know how I have endured? My father's face was stern. One must look forward. I raised an eyebrow and laughed lightly. Is it past? Did my mother tell you that in a dream, or did I tell you myself? What do you mean? I mean, for the victim, the past is never past. A blood debt can only be paid with blood. I will never forget the sight of my mother, lying in a pool of her own blood, holding my hand as she died in agony. Such a gentle person, yet she could not even die in peace. Father, do you not have nightmares? Are you not afraid? He was flustered and angry, yelling at me. I think you've gone mad. Just like your short-lived mother, always jealous, short-sighted, and deserving of death. I laughed out loud. If my mother were far-sighted, why would she have chosen you, a poor scholar that even Melissa didn't want? She used her dowry to help you rise, only to be murdered by you in the end. Did you think I didn't know? You wanted my mother's dowry, and you wanted to be with Melissa, so you fed her tonic after tonic to make the baby too large, then used Melissa to shock my mother into a difficult labor, with no doctor or midwife, resulting in 2 deaths. I twisted my lips into a cruel smile. It doesn't matter. She still has me. I promised that everyone in the Sterling family who harmed her would be buried with her, and I meant it. With that, I threw a bloody ear onto the floor. They were horrified. I lowered my voice. You don't recognize it? It belongs to your precious son. They were both shocked and furious, raising their hands to roar at me. But their bodies swayed, and they couldn't even sit up straight. I kicked each of them in the chest, sending them to the ground. Thank you, housekeeper, for poisoning them for me. The 2 of you will die with me today. Instead of being poisoned by that cheap hairpin, isn't it better to go quickly all together? They struggled in terror. My damnable father even tried to crawl out, but I dragged him back by his ankle. One at a time. Don't rush. With that, I smashed a teapot over his head. Before they lost consciousness, I assured them. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about your other 2 children. When they both passed out, I called for the sweating housekeeper. Fear and regret are useless now. There is only one path forward to save yourself. Don't forget, you administered the poison. You are an accomplice. Only when they and I are dead can your son return safely. The housekeeper had no choice. To save his son and himself, he did as I commanded and dragged the 2 unconscious bodies into the room. All right, I am going to set the fire. Come back in half an hour to put it out. It will make you look like a loyal hero." The housekeeper fled. I couldn't help but laugh. I had tricked him. The packet I gave him was just flour. The sleeping drug was in the incense next to their seats. But my intention to have him killed was real. He was the one who had given false testimony in court, ruling my mother's death an accident. He was the one who had stopped my nanny from getting help from my uncle, beating her to death. Before, I had too much to consider. My own life, my uncle's family's future, Damien's career and reputation. But now, I was a dead woman. What could anyone do to me? Desecrate my corpse? I wouldn't even leave them a corpse. The fearless have nothing to fear. They would all be buried with my mother. When the housekeeper was gone, Lord Alistair's men, who had been hiding in the shadows, brought a corpse from a mass grave and placed it in the middle of the room, after ensuring the main beam would fall on my father's legs, and that Melissa would be burned but not fatally. I set the fire. The fire, fanned by the wind, spread to the rafters. I climbed over the wall and left. Half an hour later, the housekeeper returned to put out the fire. The master's legs were crushed. The mistress's body was half burned, but they were both still alive, in agony, screaming in rage. The only charred corpse was that of the young lady who had failed in her murder. Suicide plot. But he didn't dare to say anything. As an accomplice, all he could do was feign ignorance under the Marquise's questioning. Damien's face was a mask of bewildered disbelief. It has only been an hour. How could this have happened? Yes, only an hour. How could his protective shield be gone? The guard Serena had bribed, had summoned him to the north courtyard 3 times. But he had acted as if he didn't hear. Only on the 4th, the young mistress's stomach hurts. "Please come." My lord, did he finally react? "Get out." The guard froze. Damien roared, his eyes red. I said, "Get out. Do you hear me?" His red eyes were real, but whether from fear or something else, I couldn't tell. Disguised, I watched his helplessness from the crowd before riding to the north of the city to see the show. The Duchess was known for her fiery temper. This was not the first time she had dealt with a mistress. I had sent her a secret letter, telling her the Duke had another mistress in the north of the city, now 3 months pregnant, adorned with gold and jewels, living more lavishly than the Duchess herself. She had flown into a rage. She had stormed Serena's courtyard with a retinue of servants. Serena had just been with Damien, the traces of their lovemaking still on her. She was lounging on a couch in a thin gauze robe, waiting for him to return, having not had his fill. For extra allure, her robe was half open, revealing an intricate flower tattoo on her left shoulder blade. Her long legs were bare. That was the scene the Duchess walked in on. A true vixen, engaging in such debauchery in broad daylight, drag her out and beat her. Horrified, Serena didn't even have a chance to speak before she was gagged and dragged into the street. Her thin robe was torn to shreds, and she was beaten naked in public. After a dozen lashes, she was bleeding from below. Force feed her saffron. Worthless slut, thinking she can give birth to a bastard. Who does she think she is? A bowl of saffron was forced down her throat. By the time the authorities Serena's maid had called arrived, she had lost half her life and all her dignity. At the government office, it was discovered that the Duchess had the wrong person. The woman who had been beaten was the Marquise's mistress. The hall erupted in murmurs. The reason for the lady's self-immolation seemed clear. The Duchess sneered. That Marquis swore an oath by his own finger that if he betrayed his wife, he would die by 1,000 arrows. I want to see if a man's vow will come true. Ungrateful wretch, shamelessly stabbing a woman in the heart with a mistress. She will haunt you even as a ghost. Bah, apologize to you. Let your Marquise come and question me. We'll see who impeaches whom first. The Emperor's cousin, the Duchess, swept out surrounded by her entourage and went straight to the palace with the day's news. Meanwhile, the incident in the north of the city became the talk of the town. With my help, of course. By the time Damien got the news, the play was almost over. He was met with nothing but scorn and ridicule. Damien, who valued his reputation above all else, his face was blacker than the bottom of a pot. Serena, loosely wrapped in a robe, reached out to him like a drowning woman, but he just turned away coldly. My wife despised mistresses. I took pity on her as a poor slave with nowhere to go and let her stay in a courtyard. To dare to call herself the Marquise's mistress is truly shameless. A child pleasure? What were they in the face of the Marquise's power and future? The suffering I had endured for 7 years. It was now Serena's turn. Serena's face was bloodless. She shook her head, tears in her eyes. Ilara is dead. There is nothing between us anymore. Why won't you acknowledge me? It is just a child, in the future, she remembered. She had been force-fed saffron. There was no future. I pressed my hat down, watching from the crowd with great satisfaction. Serena had used my infertility as a knife to stab me more than once. But now, the same knife was in her, and she couldn't take it either. Truly, you only know the pain when the knife is in you. In the face of Damien's coldness, Serena finally seemed to see his cruelty. He could abandon a wife of 7 years. Her pleasure in bed could be replaced by countless other women. When it came to his reputation and future, a woman who had sullied his name was disposable. Brother-in-law, no brother-in-law, I can be a concubine, or even a mistress. Just don't abandon me, please. Serena clung to his robes like a last resort, but Damien pried her fingers off, one by one. From today, the north courtyard will be emptied and sold. No cats or dogs are to be left behind. Serena fell to the ground as if struck by a bolt of lightning. Her reputation ruined, her body ruined. Damien no longer wanted her. Her father was useless. What future did she have? But Damien didn't wait for her to speak again. He left for the Sterling estate without a backward glance. His reputation was tarnished. He had to bring my body back to the manor for a grand funeral to cover up the rumors with a display of real or fake grief. But when he rushed into the back courtyard, the person on the stretcher was gone. Where is she? The servant stammered. Damien could no longer contain himself and roared. I asked you, where is the person who was lying here? The servant, startled, quickly replied. The young lady hired bandits to cut off the young master's ear and destroy his manhood. When the master received the news, he said that such a venomous woman who colluded with the housekeeper to commit patricide and then harmed her own brother deserved to die. He had her body thrown into the mass grave with the dead housekeeper to be eaten by dogs. The master said she was just a criminal, not worth dirtying the official's hands. Damien staggered back 3 steps in horror. She hired assassins? Until this moment he had thought it was just a matter of my father's infidelity. He had no time to think. He rushed towards the mass grave, but as he passed me, his gaze flickered, and he grabbed my hand. Ilara. But when I slowly turned my head, the shock in his eyes faded. This completely unfamiliar face was not Ilara. He let go of my hand. How could she have such a grand plan? He had forgotten. Without my grand plans, how could he have climbed to where he was today, step by step, over mountains of corpses? By the time he reached the mass grave, the hungry wolves and tigers had been waiting. They pounced on the body, dragging the fragile skeleton to who knows where. A pile of bone fragments was all that was left. Who could tell which belonged to his wife? Damien clutched the hairpin he had meant to give me and muttered to himself. What was the point of fighting when you are dead? I gave you a child. Why weren't you satisfied? Was I just fighting? I wanted your lives. And a child like that, raised by me, would have been a knife in my own heart. Far in the distance, a guard rode up, shouting, My lord, it is terrible. The Sterling family has been raided. Damien froze. What? The one leading the raid was none other than his rival, Lord Alistair. He pulled out a stack of evidence and threw it in my father's face. The Sterling family is guilty of corruption and forming a clique. The evidence is conclusive. Take them to the dungeon for interrogation. Wait, Damien shouted. Is there solid proof? If this is a forced confession, do you know the penalty, my lord? Lord Alistair lazily lifted his eyes, met my gaze in the crowd, then sneered. Then let the Marquis see for himself. Among the evidence thrown down were letters detailing the buying and selling of official positions, all found in Damien's study. They couldn't be more real. The ones I had copied were left in his study as a decoy. Damien understood. His face changed. He couldn't say it. It was me, Alara, who had given him his retribution, while he and Serena were lost in their passion, while they were plotting to foist their child on me, while he was drinking my blood and still not satisfied. I had been sitting in my study, writing their death sentences. And at the very bottom was a signed confession from the illegitimate son. His position was given by the Marquis. Under the Marquis's banner, he had bought and sold positions, amassed wealth, and committed countless evil deeds. All of it was now confessed and signed. A lightning strike to catch them off guard, something Damien had once been a master of. But now, overwhelmed and spread too thin. He couldn't keep up. Damien's hands were shaking. She would do this to me, even abandoning her cousin? You mean Miss Sterling's cousin? By her dying wish, I have taken him under my wing and settled him in my family's estate. Seeing Damien's horrified expression, I smiled. He thought he had my cousin, that he had me trapped. But my cousin had been sent away yesterday to a post under Lord.Later. That city was Alistair's territory. If Damien wanted to harm my cousin now, he would have to think twice. Lord.Later took back the evidence and brushed past Damien. What else did she say? He gave Damien a cold look. She also said that if she had known she was wasting 7 years on a dog, she would have raised a loyal one instead. Damien froze, his face contorting. She is always like this, wanting everything. Have I not given her enough? Why can't she be content? Isn't being the Marquise's wife good enough? Why must she see everything in black and white, to the point of getting herself killed and putting everyone in this difficult position? Lord.Later sneered. When you so flamboyantly loved her, was it not for her black, and white dye rather, than yield nature, for her willingness to throw herself into the fire for your ambition? Now that you are successful, you blame her for it. It seems you were blind back then. Damien's eyes glinted with murderous intent, but Lord.Later didn't care. With a single glance, his guards dragged my father, despite his broken legs, to the dungeon. He was subjected to endless tortures, gagged so he couldn't even confess. Melissa, in the next cell, was no better off. Half her body was burned and salt was rubbed into her wounds daily, followed by a branding iron. It was a fate worse than death. After, they were tortured to the brink. My father, on his knees, finally signed a confession. Exile was unavoidable, but they dragged Damien down with them. The surprise I had left for Damien was a secret letter exposing him, delivered to the Emperor by Lord.Later. I had taken a knife for the Emperor, paving the way for Damien's success. But what if that plot had been orchestrated by him? The crime of deceiving the Emperor was treason. Before Damien could react, his manor was raided, this time by the Emperor's personal guard. Corruption. Forming cliques. Conspiring with a prince. Every charge was fatal. Damien was in denial. How could the things in his secret chamber be found? He had forgotten his love, forgotten the past. He had forgotten the grape arbor we had planted together on our wedding day. It had grown lush and full, but the day before I left, I had had it uprooted. The space was empty, but Damien, his mind only on the north courtyard, hadn't noticed. The things I had buried under it, he naturally didn't know about, but the Emperor had found them. Both the Sterling and Damien families were raided, their entire households exiled. The Sterling's main estate was not spared. Even Serena's brother, who had paraded around under Damien's name, was sent to a frozen wasteland. They thought it couldn't get worse. But as the long procession of exiles headed north, I had already used several thousand silver taels to buy them a fate where they could neither live nor die. The gnawing pain. I had tasted it. It was their turn. Serena still had her looks. To avoid hardship, she used the same trick she had used on Damien. She didn't lack for food or clothing, but she couldn't care for her crippled mother, her useless father, or the grim, terrifying Damien. The further north they went, the colder it got. In less than a month, my useless father, after endless torment, died miserably in a snowy night. No one buried him. He became food for the wolves. When he had watched my mother bleed to death, he should have known that one day, he would watch himself die. As for Melissa's son, his wounds from the bandits had festered horribly. He begged Serena to get him medicine. But where could she get medicine? He was in agony. He saw his sister, the cause of his suffering, feasting in the guards' tents. Ignoring him, driven mad by hatred, he set fire to the tents in the middle of the night. Serena was horribly burned. He died falling off a cliff while trying to escape. The rotting Melissa and her daughter were thrown together. Useless people, kept alive on a bowl of thin porridge a day, unable to live, unable to die, only to be slowly consumed by pain. When my mother lay dying in agony, these two had sat on the veranda, whispering vile things to torment her even in death. So, they too should taste the despair of a living death. I watched, satisfied. I slipped a final 100 silver taels to the escort, telling them to buy some wine, before finally showing my face. Damien was shocked. "Ilara!" He looked at me with deep affection and was about to rush forward. Why are you back? You came to see me." Just as hope filled his eyes, I smiled and pulled a knife from my belt. "To help you rise. I lost 2 children for you. The first was killed by your brother, winning you your heirship. The second died taking a knife for the emperor, making you his confidant. The power and wealth you gained with my flesh and blood, I have taken back. But the pain that was inflicted on me, it is your turn to taste it." His face changed. He turned to run, but in his heavy shackles, how could he? With a swift fall of the blade, his 2 legs were crippled. "You stood too tall, so you will spend the rest of your life crawling." The wind howled. I finally dropped the knife and the burden I had carried for over a decade. "Mother, I am free." Under the grape arbor, my mother held me, feeding me sweets she had made herself. "My darling, your uncle has always protected me. I have never known hardship. My Ilara must also live a life free of sorrow. This little brother in my belly was a difficult pregnancy. But for you, my darling, I am not afraid of a little pain." The sweetest days of my life were spent in my mother's arms, alone.